So we're talking about 1968 graduation time. I always tell people, if you think our country is in turmoil now, 68, 69, 70, we're just a young kid in college focusing on football, cars, ladies. In the meantime, literally the year I graduated was the Tet Offensive in Vietnam. And of course it was on every night and everybody tuned in to good old Walter Cronkite. And the Vietnam War dominated our country. And we're talking about, demonstrations and some riots, and it just tore our country apart. Got my degree in finance, and I knew if you can walk and chew gum, you were going to be gone. Just knew it at that point in time. This was the draft before the lottery. It was only, I think, 4 months later, got that letter, "Greetings, we want you," Uncle Sam says. And that was it. I knew I was going. So off we go, and it's very tough saying goodbye to everybody, and all of a sudden you're on a plane with, 200 other young soldiers, scared, anxious, don't know what's going on, and we're going, 22 hours to Southeast Asia. Most soldiers always talk about when the doors open up and there's that heat that just came in from Vietnam, just a very unique hot heat. Even before that, I always remember as we're circling the Saigon airport, one of the last things as I left the base in Fort Dix was a picture on the wall, kind of a battle with all these flares coming down. And in the plane, as we're landing in Saigon, I see all these flares going off. I said, oh, shoot, you're going to land right in the middle of a battle. Again, you're young, you're dumb, you don't know anything. There's always flares, always. So you got that heat when you open the door, and just another thing that comes to my mind, you get in this bus to go to processing, and there's these heavy-duty screens on the bus. Again, young and dumb. I said, what are these screens on the bus for? I said, oh, that's so they don't throw a grenade in the bus. Okay. I realized I'm not in Kansas anymore, Vietnam. The smells are different, the heat is different. Of course, the first time you see people with the cones hat and dressed in these different dresses. I was shipped off, very fortunate, once again, very lucky. Went to a huge Army, Navy, Air Force base called Cam Ranh Bay on the coast of Vietnam. Must have been, 10,000 troops there in total. Basically lived in a shack on a sand dune. Yes, I was lucky. I was not crawling around in the jungle, but it was not a fun year at all. The heat, the sand, typhoons. We would get rocketed once in a while. We would have one attack. I know they blew up all the oil facilities at the base, and that was kind of a big deal. They call them sappers, people trying to come in and throw dynamite charges at you. But the hardest thing is just no contact with, quote, the real world. I think young folks today don't realize, well, obviously, no email, no texting. We would write letters back and forth. Occasionally, you see a newspaper from a goodie box somebody got. Otherwise, we were in a police state. We were in, you had the military, you had the Army radio, you have the Army newspaper. So it was propaganda coming at you every way, except for what you just heard. Yeah. We never realized how much the world changed in our country in just the year I was gone. I mean, dress, culture, music, you name it. Riots, assassinations. It was a difficult year. My wife would write almost daily to me. We would number the letters. She would write letter number 23, and then 5 days later, I would get letter number 15, The letter number 23 said, the cat died. Letter 15 said, I got a cat. So it was kind of strange. You were allowed one, what they call Mars call, a shortwave radio call, one a year. And that was really, it was a terrible experience because you were saying, hello, honey, over. And she'd say, I miss you. No, you have to say over. And meanwhile, there's 50 guys in line behind you. That didn't work at all. I did meet her. I would do guard duty and, you know, live ammo and all that fun stuff. You made buddies. You had fun. There was boredom. There was a lot of alcohol. There was drugs. Again, it was a crazy, crazy war, a crazy time for our country and our troops. But again, I was fortunate. I came home, I thought, with all my legs and toes and fingers. 15, 20 years later, I realized I had Agent Orange, and I have a form of leukemia that's treatable, but will never go away. And all the doctors say it was because of Agent Orange, which, by the way, is a very powerful chemical that they defoliate jungles with, if you can imagine that. And it came in 55-gallon orange drums, and that's why they called it Agent Orange. That year was a slow year, day by day, and of course everybody in the military usually has what they call a calendar, and you got 22 days and a wake up and 21 days and a wake up, and you're just counting the days to go home to the real world. It was difficult coming home. I remember flying it, I think it was Fort Lewis on the West Coast. I remember a sergeant saying, "You're not going to wear that uniform going home, are you?" I said, "What do you mean, Sergeant?" He said, "You'll see, but you should get into civilian clothes if you're going to fly home." Didn't understand how much the military at that point was just not in favor with the public, we'll put it at best. And it wasn't really just people who came in your face about being in Vietnam. It was the apathy of, "Why did you go?" Or, "Oh, I didn't know you were gone, and let's move on to something else." Nobody cared.
Right.
Just nobody cared. And that hurt. It took me 20 years. It took me 20 years to wear a military hat and be proud that I was a veteran. And now, 50 years later, I would call myself a patriot. So it was quite an experience. I learned discipline, I learned teamwork, I learned patience. I learned my priorities in Vietnam, what's really important in life. And of course, that's family and health and so forth. Looking back, I'm angry at Washington and the generals and why we fought there and why we did so long. We weren't treated as men. And 60,000 soldiers did not come back to Vietnam. Untold number of soldiers, obviously injured, damaged emotionally, physically. And then the Agent Orange folks, I can't even comprehend the number of that. I'm proud of my military service. I'm proud of being a veteran. I served. I did my duty. I wish more people today would understand that freedom is not free. And whether it's Vietnam or Korea or World War II, or there's a price to pay. And unfortunately, they don't teach that price in school. One of my biggest regrets, I'm just thinking of Vietnam, is coming home when nobody cared and nobody even wanted to know if you were in the military or you didn't want to tell them. I got rid of everything. Everything that was OD green that said Army on it, I got rid of. My biggest regret is both my wife and I would get rid of all those letters we sent to each other. You just wanted to just bury that and put it in the past. I wish I had those letters. But here I am. I'm lucky, despite whether it's Agent Orange or whatever. At this age, fortunate, and 2 daughters and 3 grandchildren, and I'm just a lucky man. I came home. I served and I came home. Would I trade it? No. It's a part of my life. And of course, the Vietnam brothers, the veteran brothers, are a part of me. I'm now involved in a small military museum. I get to talk to a lot of veterans. Was it worth Agent Orange? Was it worth leukemia in my blood? I wouldn't change a thing. I was fortunate along the way.
How were you exposed to Agent Orange?
Pardon?
How were you exposed to Agent Orange? Did they just fly over the base and just...
They would fly over in C-130s, and they would, in 3 in formation, and you're not talking about a crop duster. You're talking at maybe 3,000 feet in formation, just spraying it everywhere. And if they sprayed it at 3,000 feet it could be 2 miles away and it still comes over to
Okay.
you.
Yeah.
And of course, there's a reason for defoliate in the jungle. So if you were at a base, you can see the enemy at least maybe half a mile out or something like that.
Okay.
But they had no idea, I'm sure, of the power of that chemical, how powerful a chemical would take to defoliate a jungle that's been there 2,000 years, or the future effect. I can only imagine, besides all the veterans that come, and I hear so many veterans have Agent Orange medical issues. I can only imagine what we did to the Vietnam environment, the livestock, the generations of kids there.
What do you want people that might see this interview? What would you like them to know about your service? What do you want them to remember you by?
I don't want them to remember me. I think, I'll pick a number. I think there was 2.5 million people, ladies and men, that served in Vietnam. Some in combat, some in not. They did their duty. And some paid the price, some the ultimate price for it. I don't want it to be forgotten. I've had somebody come into this small military museum I'm involved in. 2 weeks ago, somebody maybe 30 years old or more came in and said, "Why did you go to Vietnam?" I said, "I was drafted." And then he looked at me and said, "What's the draft?" He had no idea. So they come in and they say, what was Korea? What was Vietnam? It's not being taught these days.
Yeah.
I want people to remember the sacrifice that was made. We didn't win that war, but millions of soldiers, men and women, went and did their duty and came home. In some cases, paid a price for it. In some cases, came home but became positive parts of their community. Whether it's volunteering or becoming, they're just doing their civic duty. They understood there's a price to pay in America for freedom.
What advice would you give somebody, a young man or woman who is considering military service? What advice would you give them?
I would try to be honest and open their eyes to what they're really going to get into. Okay, don't always believe the commercials, of course. Obviously, that Marine uniform looks really nice, the Marine dress uniform. Just realize the cost, realize what you're going to do, realize the sacrifice you or your family is going to make. Make sure there's something you really want to do, because once you go in, you're in.
You're right.
And you want to, it's like any job in life. You want to at least, quote, enjoy it or understand that you're doing your duty and not fight it every day. No, for some people, the military is the right thing. Now, of course, totally different these days with the volunteer corps. Totally different situation. We were just not prepared. I'll give you another quick example. At Fort Dix, when we were training to go to Vietnam, we were actually in a foot of snow, crawling in the woods, in a foot of snow with a ton of clothes on. And the sergeant said, "Pretend you're in a jungle and pretend there's a village over there." Okay, that's the training we got. We didn't even have training with the right rifles. We had an M14 instead of an M16. They just wanted bodies. That's all we were bodies to go over there. And again, we were used, I don't know, politically, economically, socially, we were used. Understand, when you're in the military, they break you down and they teach you discipline. They teach you your job's for your buddy on your left and the buddy on your right. Your job is to do what you're told to do. Yeah. Sometimes some people can't quite get that concept. And you have to. You can't fight the system. I'm not sure I would recommend being an infantryman, but again, some folks need it, and some folks want to do their civic duty, if you will. I certainly wouldn't try to tell them don't do it. I would just want to make them know what you're getting into. That's all. And have the backing of your family too, whoever that family may be.